Hey guys, sorry for the late upload. I'm definitely not feeling well. But I'm gonna try to tough through it and do a video for you because I love you guys, even though I didn't get any donations today. You guys are probably like, this dude's gonna die. I'm not gonna waste money sending him donations anymore. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, part of the deal is you guys send donations because you want me to upload content, and I haven't been as on point lately because I've been really sick. And I tried to do a video earlier tonight, and I just wasn't. It was really hard for me to get through it. I don't know if any of you had, I'm sure a lot of you have had food poisoning, but it's the kind of thing where I just feel completely fatigued and kind of spaced out. It's hard for me to connect my thoughts and be as articulate as I normally am, but I'm going to try for you anyway. So this is part 25 of my 5 years in federal prison. It's so hard for me to keep track of these. Yes, this is part 25. So where we left off last time, I had narrowly escaped the Vice Lord debacle. That's one of the disadvantages of being in the Midwest. Although it's a lot more mellow than somewhere with a racial divide. There's not the volatility that there would be in like California, or I heard Texas is pretty bad like that too. And in the Midwest, it's kind of every man for himself, but there are gangs that exist. So you can get in a situation like this where I owed King money. He was a little guy. He couldn't have beat me up, I don't think. I mean, I was lifting weights at the time, and I was like a short, stocky guy. I was a lot bigger than him, even though I'm not that big, but I was bigger than him. And so when somebody gets scared like that, they assemble their homies, and all of a sudden I'm in a bad situation because I'm not a gang member, and there's not that like automatic solidarity just because I'm white with other white people. Thankfully, my friend Nick and some of my other solid homeboys have my back, and they came to defend me. So I was just fortunate, There was a lot of times in federal prison where I just lucked out, and I had people looking out for me. And we've talked about it before. Maybe people liked my sense of humor. I think a lot of people saw my naivety. They saw that I was a youngster. I kind of had that. I was kind of like a surrogate son or a surrogate little brother. I don't want to deviate from the story too much, but remember the story I talked about where that guy Ed was the shot caller for C. Lower in Victorville? And he had switched a visit with his wife came to see him, and he came and sat with my parents, and he basically told them like, hey, if you guys don't cough over the money, like something really bad's going to happen to him. We don't want him to check in because it's going to follow him, etc., etc. Somebody contacted me on Facebook after that video had uploaded, somebody that I was at Victorville with. I stay in touch with a lot of people, and they said, hey, Ed's out, and they gave me his phone number, and I called him, and it's been out for a year. I called him and I said, hey, Ed, it's Ryan Leone. And he's like, who? And I was like, Ryan Leone. And he's like, from where? From such and such? He thought I was like somebody from the free world. I think he's doing plumbing right now, and I thought it was like a plumbing gig. And I was like, no, Ryan Leone from Victorville, man. He's like, the kid? I was like, yeah, the kid that was always like your problem stepchild. I was always running up debts, and you always saved my ass. He's like, damn, man, how are you? And I kind of told him what had happened to me. I told him that I'd been back to prison twice since then. And I told him very genuinely, Ed, I just want to thank you. I was such an idiot when I was younger like that. I made so many bad decisions that was a liability, not just to myself, but to other people. And you really stepped up to the plate, and you saved my life. And he's like, yeah, man, I've thought about you a number of times. And I always wondered what happened to you. I always wondered if you turned out okay. I always liked you, kid. I was like, yeah, I'm good. And I told him that I wrote a book and that there's a movie coming out. He's like, get the fuck out of here. And I might have him on the show. But the point of the story, and why I deviated a little bit from this current story, is that, it's amazing how people like that are so impactful. There's a special bond that you build in prison that's unlike anything I've ever experienced. I'd imagine that it's equatable to being in the military when you're in a situation where you're risking your life very frequently, you get this brotherhood bond with the people that you're doing time with. And I could feel genuine love. You know, it's like I spent a year with him. And in that year, I probably know him better than I know most people that I grew up with. It's just that special bond that we had established. And he was really happy to hear from me. And I told him, I said, yeah, man, I'm posting videos on YouTube. And I talked about that time. You remember that time you switched visits with me? And he's like, yeah, how can I forget? And I asked him if he'd ever be on the show, and he said that he would. So maybe we'll do a video with him. I'll do a little FaceTime with him. And I apologize for deviating from the story, but I figure I'm usually spending time doing shout-outs. I didn't have any today, so I could just update you that I got in contact with that guy again, and he was genuinely happy to hear from me. And it was cool. You know, he's an older guy now. He's like in his 70s. That guy saved my fucking life. And I love him. Like, I can say I, like, actually love the guy. So, you know, I had escaped from the Vice Lord situation, and Liz and I had hooked up again. We'd kissed. I finger banged her, and we were trying to do like a joint effort. We were trying to coordinate a way to have sex. We both really wanted to. I think she wanted to just as badly as I did for the novelty of it. Just that it was like in prison, and it's like super like taboo and super grimy, and so we started planning it, and she had told me that she was going to be working in the hole coming up on the next rotation, whatever it's called. You know, they do, it's like cycles in there. Like, she's in this unit for 3 months, and then I go over there. And then she goes over to another unit. Sometimes they go to the hole, and because she was new, she was working the smaller unit, and then they wanted her to work in the hole for 3 months too. So the hole really gives you a good inherent understanding of how the prison population works, because that's like the belly of the beast right there. That's like the jail within prison. So it's very, you know, evocative. It teaches you about how things really work in prison. So she was going to work in the hole, and she's like, look, all you have to do is go to the hole on purpose. I was like, well, that's not hard. I'm always in the hole. I was like a chronic hole person. Anyway, and so I had planned, you know, she's like, until I go work in that section, we should cool it. Because it was really easy for us to get caught in the situation that we were. There was this hallway. There was a camera up on the corner. It would have been easy. They have a command station where they look at all the different cameras at the prison at one time. And surely they put extra attention on female COs, because they're at risk. I mean, there's been several situations where female COs have been raped by lifers. They just don't care. And they're like, fuck it. It's, you know, it's like the only chance they'll ever have to have sex with a woman again. And it happens, unfortunately, pretty often in prison, especially on the East Coast. It happens more on the East Coast and the South than it does on the West Coast. So she was under more scrutiny than, say, like a male CO. So that was our plan. We kind of cooled it off. And I had to kick heroin because, you know, King had cut me off. He's like, you know, you got to square up with me. I had tons of commissary. I had tons of books of stamps. I had tons of porn. I'm like, come on, man, I'll give you $2,000 worth of porn, or I'll give you $2,000 worth of commissary if we can squash it. Nope. No, man, it's bad business. We agreed to money send out. He wanted money going to his girl. And I'm just like, well, what if I can't make that happen? He's like, well, you already said that you were going to. I'm like, fuck. So I'm going around the prison, and I'm basically asking everyone. I'm like, look, I'll give you my entire porn collection for $1,000 if you can have your family send it out to this person's family. And at Wisconsin, you'll hear this in the feds a lot. You'll hear that different yards have money, right? Like, you always hear that El Reno in Oklahoma's got money. You always hear that, you know, there's broke yard, like Lompoc has money. Oxford has money. There's just certain prisons where, you know, the inmate population has more money than the rest of the prisons in the country for some reason. It's just like weird little pockets of prisoner wealth. I think one of the reasons that Oxford was like that was because there were so many mafia guys there. There was so many old mobsters. It was like a privileged yard. because it was so kickback, because they had the culinary arts program. Culinary arts program was a big perk because they're not going to give it to a lifer, right? You have to, there are certain conditions to take the culinary arts program. But one of the perks that we had as inmates at a prison with the culinary arts program is they made, as part of their training, they made food for the staff, for the COs. And they would make good food, you know, like they would make waffles for breakfast and like real bacon and real sausage, and they would have lamb chops and pork chops, lobster sometime, real cheesecake. And some of the guys that worked in the culinary arts program could smuggle this stuff back from the program and like sell it on the underground economy at Oxford. So I don't know how many culinary arts programs there are in the Federal Bureau of Prisons, meaning all the federal prisons, but there's not a lot of them. So if you have money there, you can literally be eating carne asada burritos, carne asada quesadillas, lobsters, cheesecake. I got lamb chops all the time because I had all that porn money, and that's what I was spending it on a lot. I was spending it on good food. And so this place just had a lot of money. It had weights, it had the culinary arts program, and it was kickback. So I was going around to everybody, and I was asking them, come on, man, I'll give you $3,500 worth of stamps. I think that's what I had at the time. I had like a huge stack of stamps hidden up in that CMS attic where all the porn was. I had like $3,500 worth of stamps. I was going up to people, I'll give you $3,500 worth of stamps for $1,000 if you can have them send it out. Problem with that is, so like at Victorville, even though it's a broke yard, people want stamps because there's so many drugs on that prison. You know, there's so many drugs on the yard that it's to your, like if you're a junkie and you have money, right? It's to your advantage to buy $3,500 worth of stamps for $1,000 street money because you can keep your habit going, you know, 4 times longer than you could without it. But at a prison like this, you didn't need stamps as frequently. I mean, people did business with stamps, but it was for like pornography, culinary arts food, exclusive shoes that maybe they sold at a different prison and they didn't have here, stuff like that. So nobody wanted to buy $3,500 worth of stamps for $1,000 send out. And I had told my parents, I said, look, I haven't asked you for money for a long time. Can you please send me $1,000? Please send me $1,000. You were sending me $300, $340 a month anyway before this. And at this point, I wasn't asking them for money anymore. I told my parents, I was like, I'm hustling, you know. I was selling porn, and I was soon to run another poker table there. But I didn't need money from them anymore, so I wasn't asking for it. And so I told my dad, I'm like, please, can you please Western Union? I got in a bad situation. I basically vouched for this other guy, and I got in the middle of something. My dad's like, you're a fucking idiot. You did that with Jamie Lake. Now you're doing it again with this little snaggletooth education buttfuck pirate. You know, why are you doing that? And I'm just like, ugh. So he's like, fine, I'll do it. But I'm not sending you any more money. And I still had, you know, this was probably like the spring or the summer of 2012. I was getting out in like the winter of so I had months to go, right? I had like 6 or 7 months, whatever. And so I said, yeah, like I was making enough money. I didn't need my parents to send me money anymore. So my dad sends the money, and I see King on, you know, like after he sends it, I see him, and I'm like, hey King, did you get the money? And he's just like, I'm like, thank God. I went and called my dad, and you know, I'd already kicked heroin at this point. It took me like, I don't know, a week to get my dad to send the money, and I'd already had to kick. And after he got the money, I went to King and I said, hey, can I buy more? And he's like, yeah, how much do you need? And I'm like, can you sell me 100 paper? He's like, you have to have your family send $100 on the street. I was like, yeah, for sure. You know, even though I knew that I was going to be in a bad situation again with this, but my whole junkie logic behind it was, you know, it might be hard to get people to buy $3,500 worth of stamps, but it'd be a lot easier to sell, you know, $500 worth of stamps for $100 send out, where they send King's girl money. One thing that I forgot to mention is that a lot of the stamps that they were using was going for sports gambling. They had sports tickets and they had poker. So people did use stamps for that, but it's not like drug money. It's different, you know, it's not as much. So I told King and he's like, yeah, I'll meet you at Chow. I was like, all right, cool. And so Chow comes, I go, and I'm waiting. Like, usually I see him where he's putting away the trays, and I see Taco. He's like, hey, man, hey, fool, you almost started a race for her. And, like, all these black guys are looking, and I'm just like, I don't know. And I'm like, Taco, shut the fuck up, dude. You fucking dork, dude. Say stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, man, all right. It's just, you're crazy, dude. You're a crazy white dude. I'm like, all right. So I go, and I'm looking for King, and I, like, walk over to the black section where all the Vice Lords sit. And I'm like, hey, do you know where King is? And they're like, dude, he got cracked. I'm like, what do you mean? They're like, yeah, he got cracked under investigation. You know, somebody told on him that he was doing the shoe thing at Visit, and, you know, it was Visit Day that day. And I guess he was going to see his girl, and they arrested her, and they arrested him on a new charge. And what that is that's introduction of contraband into a federal institution. That's another 5 years on his sentence, and that's 5 years for her, for his girl. And they got busted because somebody told on him. It was like the day after, the day that my dad sent that $1,000. I was like, God damn it, you know? And at this point, Link had checked in, by the way. As soon as he found out that I had paid King, he took off because he knew I was going to beat him up, which is true. Definitely, like, after I paid the money and I didn't think that I could get it from him anymore, I was like, I got to save face, at least keep my reputation intact, and I was going to beat him up. So, so King got busted. No more heroin on the yard. I'm like, fuck. So, okay, so now a little bit of time goes by, and Liz starts working in the hole. And I didn't tell a soul that I'd kissed her. I didn't tell a soul that I had fingered her. You know, I was smart enough to know that that's the kind of thing that gets out, and then it just kills the whole party. So time came for her to work at the hole, and I was thinking of creative ways to go on purpose. I was like, this is going to be fun. There was always a guy at Chow, this asshole cop. He had his face, he had like a burn scar on his face. He was part of the Cowboys, which was a federal prison CO gang that was gambling. They had an illegal gambling circuit where they would make inmates fight when they were in the hole, and they would all gamble on it. And they got in trouble for it, but none of them got fired. They were called the Cowboys. And someone had done the boiling hot baby oil thing on his face, so he had a big old scar from that. It's called the Cowboys. I think you can Google it. I know I found it on the LexisNexis before. But he was always just an asshole. He's just a miserable fucker. And, you know, he'd be like, tuck your shirt in. So I go to Chow one day, and she's working in the hole. And he's like, I had my shirt untucked on purpose. He's like, Leone, tuck your fucking shirt in. And I'm like, dude, fuck you. And I just get my tray, and I throw it at the wall. And I get tackled. I get cuffed. Everyone's, like, looking at me, and they're like, Jesus. Leone's having a freak out again. And I go to the hole. So I'm in there. She's walking her rounds. I see her like the next day. What did I get for that? I don't know. It's like disobeying staff orders. I got like a week in the hole. You know, they took my commissary, but my commissary was already taken. I don't remember. It was like I had to go to the hole for a week. And she does rounds, and she's like, she just nods at me. I nod at her. It was a very like Fight Club-esque moment. And later, she's walking again. I'm like, hey, can you get me a book? And she's like, yeah, what do you want? I'm like, I don't know. Can you just get me something good? She's like, sure. So she goes and grabs me a book. You know, they have like a book cart, and she brings it to me, and sure enough, there's a little message written inside. I knew that she would do that if I'd asked for a book. And it said, sign up for Law Library on Sunday. I'd gone to the hole on a Friday. Friday. So it was going to be the next day. And usually you have to be in the hole for like 30 days to be eligible to go to the law library, but obviously she could circumvent that, override it, and pull me out. So they came by for law library signups, and I signed up for it. I didn't have a cellie. I was just by myself, solitary confinement. And funny stuff happens in the hole. People throw apples at the warden's head. People fill up styrofoam cups with piss and splash it on COs. People go crazy in there. They throw lumps of shit like they're monkeys and make monkey noises as they're doing it. It's very, like, very primal. It's very bizarre. People lose their mind in the hole. So this stuff's going on. I'm just kind of being entertained. And Sunday comes along. I had signed up for law library, and she pulls me out. And, you know, I cuff up. You have to put your hands behind your back, and then you walk up to the door. And she had walked me. You got to be escorted by 2 COs. So she grabbed me, but there was another guy. They pull me to the law library, which is like in this secluded corner. It was the perfect situation. It was like this little locked room. Imagine there's like a door like that, right? And it's just this little room with a computer monitor, and you can look up cases. I used to be bored when I'd be in the hole and like look up the Unabomber's case, and I just like, I mean, really, like, they'd have like comprehensive information on his case, like all the books that they raided from his house. He had like 3,000 books in his little shack. And I was like, oh, wow, he liked The Great Gatsby. Oh, he liked Hunter S. Thompson. Oh, that's pretty interesting. But today, I had the sole mission to have sex. So I'm in there, and sure enough, I'm just sitting in there kind of typing, and she comes in there, and she locks the door behind us. There's no cameras. It's a blind spot, right? And she comes in there. We start kissing. She's playing with my hair. I got a boner instantly. I was like, wow, dude. I felt like I was 13 again. And I bent her over the desk, and I lasted about 7 seconds. And we have a full hour. So I'm like, wait. Don't let that be a testament to what I'm capable of. Let me try again. So, you know, I mean, this is like years that, and before I'd gone to prison, I was on methadone. I had 0 sex drive. I didn't have sex with Jenny for 2 years before I went to prison. So I haven't had sex for like 5 years. It was like overstimulation. And so, and I'm sure people are going to ask, did you nut inside of her? Yes, I did. Stupid of me. Because she could always flip the script and be like, he raped me or whatever. I just wasn't thinking. I was just like completely blinded by horniness. So round 2 lasts like 30 minutes. Awesome. She leaves. And, you know, I just kind of wait in there on the computer, and they come and escort me back. And she kind of gives me the Fight Club look again. You know, this time it's like more fierce. She's like, I'm like, and I cuff up, and she takes me back. That was it. It's not like we could do this every day in there. We could only do it on law library days, and there was a rotation. So this went on 3 times. There's 3 separate incidences with this, with Liz. And little did I know, after she had gotten out of the rotation of the hole, she had started talking to another white inmate. And they started some romantic thing, like, behind my back. This is a guy I know. I didn't tell anybody about this at the prison I was at, but he was getting her to bring cell phones, tobacco, weed. I never got the chance to do that. My shit was simply sex, you know? Even though I wanted all those things. And he was emailing her on core links, and they ended up getting caught. And she got arrested, and he got shipped out of there under an investigation. And for those of you that were at Oxford with me, now you know what this is. You probably know exactly what I'm talking about, and now you're putting the pieces together, and you're probably like, wow. And I didn't tell a soul about that while I was there. And that's very hard for me to do, but I kept it to myself, you know? Well, that's what happened. You know who got shipped. He's from Chicago. They shipped him out of there. Under an investigation or whatever, but they, like, somehow they tracked the email, whatever. So, you know, around this time, now it's June. I know this for a fact. I know exactly what day it is, even, because I'll never forget what happened to me. My grandfather was getting sick. My mom's dad. I called him Nano. He lived in South San Francisco. And he was getting sick, and it was really frustrating that I couldn't I couldn't really talk to him. You know, he had kind of lost his mind to, he wasn't lucid anymore. I don't know if it's dementia, but he wasn't coherent anymore. And I got to talk to him on the phone shortly before he passed away. And, you know, I said, hey, man, I love you, and I'm really sorry for the way that I turned out, and I'm sorry for putting your daughter through everything that I did. It was like a really emotional call on my end. I mean, he wasn't coherent, but I felt the pain of it. And during this time, I'm going up to the computer lab. I'm working on Wasting Talent. I'm kind of fueled by the dream that that book is going to change my life. You know, every night I go to bed and I think about that. And I'd had sex in prison, so now my confidence level was way more up there. But the book was coming out really well, and I had like dreams that I would get a film deal and I'd be touring, things that actually all ended up happening. But that's really what got me through at the end there. And every day I'd go to education, and to go to education you have to get what's called an education pass. You either get a recreation pass or an education pass. Not all prisons are like this. Oxford was for whatever reason. And there's a limited amount of passes. So if you don't get up to the CO station soon enough in your unit and say, okay, I want to go to education, they sign you up on a list. This is so they know where everybody is at all times for like their census count. You don't get to go. And my schedule every single day was I would wake up, go to breakfast. At this point, I think I was working out before breakfast at like 5 in the morning. And I would go eat breakfast. I'd come back. I'd watch CNN for a while. And then I'd get an education pass at 8:30 in the morning. I'd go right until 11:30. They'd do recall, come back. I'd eat lunch. And, excuse me. And then I would go from, I believe, 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock back to education. And I'd always have to get my pass. So this particular day, this is June 12th, 2012, I, for whatever reason, missed the education pass. You know, and I never did that. That may have happened to me one other time before, but when I went up to, forget what happened, I think somebody held me up and they were like talking to me, and by the time I got up to the CO station, they didn't have any education passes left. And I was like, fuck, man, because I loved going up there and doing my writing sessions. This is what I lived for, this and lifting weights and doing, you know, pull-ups, push-ups, and dips before breakfast. Those are like my 3 things. Push-ups, pull-ups, dips, writing, lifting weights, and maybe like reading. And I forgot to mention, this is an important part, my friend Paul Harper, the guy that was in the video where he got burned, we had a big falling out before I went to prison. And I'm going to do another series with Paul about our fallout and everything, because it's a really good story. But we had fallen out, and he reached out to me when I was at Victorville. And he said, hey, man, I'm sober. And this is one of the most degenerate alcoholics I've ever met. One of the most degenerate alcoholics, heroin addicts I've ever met in my life. I mean, definitely just as bad as me, if not worse. And he wrote me and he's like, hey, I'm in AA. I'm doing my amends. And I just want you to know that I love you and I forgive you. So we started talking, was at Victorville, and we continued to talk, and we, you know, kind of refurbished our relationship, you know, over the next couple years while I was in prison. When I got to Oxford, I had asked him for a pen pal because he was in AA. I'm like, hey, can you just stand up at an AA meeting and be like, hey, I got this buff friend with a small root beer barrel dick, and he's got a bomb personality. Anybody want to write him? And 2 girls ended up writing me. This girl, Rachel, and this girl, Gigi. And Rachel was a total weirdo. She's like, do you want to read some of my journal entries? I was like, yeah. And she's like, yeah, all right. And she started, like, we were talking on Corlink. She was copying and pasting these journal entries that she did because she knew I was an aspiring writer and she was an aspiring writer too. So she sends me these journal entries and they're way out, right? She's talking about getting gang fucked by a bunch of black guys in Oakland for a half-eighth of weed. And look, I'm not judgmental, but yeah, I'm not racist. That's it. It had nothing to do with them being black. But I just couldn't with her. It was like, I couldn't imagine some relationship coming into fruition and like marrying her someday, and always thinking in the back of my head that she got gang fucked for weed. What the fuck? Right? But this other girl, Gigi, she was 19. I was 26, and she started writing me, and she was cool. We didn't have like a romantic thing at first. She would just email every day, and it was like a very boring correspondence. It was like, she's like, today I'm walking my dog, and then I'm doing this. But it was nice to have a female, you know, giving me attention. I didn't even know what she looked like. She never even sent me a picture at this point. And, you know, one day, I don't know, I was bored, and I just was like, you're boring. You're a boring bitch. And like, I don't talk like that usually, but I did in this instance. And she's like, I like it when you talk like that to me, Daddy. I was like, all right, well, this got more interesting. And so I started talking like bad to her, and she's like, I love that. And but we started having like this weird, I don't know why I called her that. I know in retrospect I feel really bad about it. It's not politically correct or whatever, but I said it. So what? So we start having this like romantic relationship, and like it starts getting deep. I know it's weird that was like what the foundation was, that I was like talking bad to her and she was always calling me Daddy. But we started this passionate email writing correspondence at this point. And we were like saying I love you to each other. We're both fucking weirdos, right? And I'd never even seen a picture still at this point, but I'm like, I love you. And I'm talking to her on the phone, and she got a visit approved, and she was going to drive to Wisconsin to come see me, and total weirdo. Actually the first girl that I had sex with when I got out of prison. But anyway, and then she sends me a picture of her one day, and she's beautiful. I'm like, what? Why is this beautiful girl, why is she giving me so much attention while I'm in prison? And I'd come to find out later, that's a whole nother story. Total weirdo. Got her pregnant when I got out, but we'll get to that. A lot of interesting stuff happened down the line. Anyway, so we're talking all the time, and she's in AA, and she's one of those people that's like 18 or 19, and you know, she got sober at 18 or whatever, but she was supposedly like a hardcore heroin addict, whatever. I don't want to speak more on that. I don't want to piss people off. I mean, and addiction's addiction. But, so I'm writing her all the time, and she's like, my book and writing her are like the two things I'm living for at the time. So this day that I miss education, I'm bummed out, right? Like, I don't know what to do with myself when I'm in the unit. It's just like, there's nothing to do. In prison, when you get a structure, when you get a routine, when you get a program, when your structure gets out of whack a little bit, you go crazy. You just don't know what to do with yourself. I'm used to doing the same thing every day for years. And so I'm sitting in the unit, I'm watching like, you know, Jersey Shore with people. I'm just like, man, fuck, I want to be writing in the computer lab right now. I don't want to be watching this shit. And this guy comes up to me. His name is Chi-Town Brown. Tim Brown. He's from Chicago. It's his real name. And he's like, hey man, talk like that. Hey man, I never talked to this guy before. Like, I knew who he was, and I knew he hung out with like Skags and some of my other like degenerate druggy friends. But it's just like somebody I'd never talked to. He's like, hey man, you still do heroin, man? I was like, yes. He's like, look, I did too much. There's about a half a shot left in my binky. I'm like, binky? I've been shooting up. I try to shoot up with this copper thing, and you've had a binky this whole time? He's like, yeah, he's talking more raspy than normal because he's high. I heard you were a junkie, man. I heard you were a junkie, and I'll give it to you for free. I was like, dude, I love heroin. I love free. Let's go. So I go into a cell, and there's literally blood in the binky. Like, there's like a shot, it's China White, and, you know, I'd always wondered what happened to all the heroin, but like, this guy had a bunch of it still. After King got busted, there was still some there, so all King's dope. I remember I shot up in my hand, and I did it, and I got high as fuck. This is like a real binky, real needle, and I get high. I'm like, he's like, do you want more? You want more, man? I'm like, yeah. He's like, tomorrow. I'm I'm like, all right, cool. I go back to my cell, and now we had MP3 players, and I'm listening to like Sublime, wrenching on my ride, shit like that. I'm sitting there listening to Sublime, and CO comes in. It was like 30 minutes later after I did the shot. He goes, Leone, you gotta go to the lieutenant's. You got a test. I'm like, what? I had never been drug tested in federal prison. Now, they do random drug tests, but it had never happened to me. Usually you have to get told on. And I knew right away that this dude set me up. It was just, what? You're just going to give me like a free shot of heroin? And he probably got a dirty. And he said that he'd give him 3 people. And I was collateral damage with that. So, I'm like, all right. And so, I go to the lieutenant's office. Now, you have 2 plays that you can do at this point. Remember, I'd been off heroin for like a week at this point. I just did it 30 minutes before. I didn't know if it metabolized at this point. I didn't know if it was going to show up. If you refuse a drug test, it's all bad. It's like, you're instantly screwed. So I decided just to roll the dice. I was like, I might come up clean. Who knows? I only did it 30 minutes ago. So I remember the guy is watching me. Real weirdo. He's like, hey, man. How's it going? Just looking at my cock. I'm like, yeah, it's going good. You're just peeing. So I start peeing. You know, it's hard to pee when you're on heroin. So it's like taking me forever to go. And I pee, and it's one of those like 5 panels. And so it's like one of those things where it's the lid where you peel it, and then you have the 5 panels. And he's like, it'll just take a minute. He's like licking his lips. Just take a minute, man. I'm like, ugh, dude. Reminded me of that guy in Boogie Nights. I don't know if you've seen Boogie Nights, but the guy that like picks up Mark Wahlberg and like makes him jerk off in front of him. That kind of guy. You know, there's a lot of COs like that in prison. So it sucks, dude. But I'm like, all right, man, I'm gonna go. He's like, you're dirty, man. I don't know what to tell you, man. It's like he was giving me like I did something personal to him. I'm like, okay. He's like, put your hands behind your back, man. I'm like, all right. Cuff up, and he sends me to the hole. And we're gonna get into what happened after that in my 5 years in federal prison, part 26. I try to make this video a little longer because I've been slacking. I haven't been feeling well. But I love you. You can hit that GoFundMe. That would be phenomenal. I'm not going to die if you send me money, I promise. And if you can like, comment, share, subscribe, and palabra.